Hello and welcome to BWTV. This is Brij Pahwa again, and I have a very important guest with me today, Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer of NSDC, Mr. Jayant Krishna. Mr. Krishna, thank you so much for giving BW
Hi.
Businessworld your time. Mr. Krishna, my first question to you is, Skill India movement is a long drawn movement as of now. NSDC's setting up was way back in 2008, and this government has provided a strong impetus to the organization. My first question to you would be on the numbers. How many Indians have been skilled so far under the Narendra Modi regime?
The way we look at numbers is not when the new government came into being. We look at things in totality. So first of all, I'll talk to you about what kind of numbers have happened under the NSDC ecosystem, which means the network of training partners and centers that we have been able to create. You know, as on December 2017, cumulatively, since the time we started our operations, almost 1.4 crore people have been trained directly by NSDC partners. If you look at in the last couple of years under the Skill India mission directly, you know, we have been skilling about more than 1 crore people every year, kind of a thing. But let me also tell you that, you know, the purpose behind Skill India mission is not that government takes complete custody of all skills training that happens in the country. I mean, they are the ecosystem creators and enablers. They catalyze the process. So a lot of training, perhaps bigger than this, happens in the corporate sector, you know, completely funded by them and so on and so forth. So that data is not getting captured, you know. So otherwise, you know, last couple of years we've been doing, Skill India mission has been doing more than 1 crore, and NSDC since its inception has done almost 1.4 crore people, and bulk of the achievements have happened in the last 3 years only, you know, in NSDC, because earlier the numbers used to be smaller.
So from the outset, it looks like that it's government's prerogative to skill people and provide them jobs rather than the private sector. So coming to my next question, what is the skills to jobs ratio? Because ultimately the skills that you are providing have to result in job creation as well. And under the government, we have seen that the job market is on a tad low.
See, again, you know, talking about any financial year will give figures which may be lopsided. So I'll again talk about since inception of NSDC. See, as you know, part of our organization works like a development bank where we give soft loans, term loans, which are softer in nature, lower rate of interest. We also participate in equity support, and also selectively small amounts of grants also we give. So here, whatever funding we do, it is mandatory for our training partners to place at least 70% of their all the people who go through the system. You'll ask me that, have you been able to achieve that? My answer would be no. We have not been able to achieve 70%, but cumulatively since our inception, our data shows that for the fee-based training that our partners do, we have been able to achieve anywhere between 52% to 55%.
But that's with the fee-based training.
Yeah, fee-based training. Yeah. So, you know, for a country as a whole, that data is still not there, that, you know, how many people were placed. But let's understand, when we talk about placement, it's placement, wage employment, as well as self-employment.
So how do you plan on to map that data? Because it's very important for you as an organization to actually map what you are doing and what you have achieved.
Yeah, so whatever happens under the NSDC ecosystem, it's completely mapped. No part of the value chain is unmapped, you know, very clearly. And but in the larger ecosystem, you know, it's a challenge that how do we collect that data for, see, for example, Government of India ministries do skilling. So most of the data is on track and that's available. State skill development missions do training. Bulk of that data is also available, you know, if not 100% accuracy, but, you know, you have a lot of that data available. But both Government of India ministries and state governments put together, perhaps more amount of training happens, is done by corporates. I know some corporates which by themselves skill almost 50,000 people in one single company in 1 year. Look at the IT industry. You know, they skill, you know, at least the top few players, you know, they skill anywhere between 30,000 to 60,000 people per annum. And it's not a 1 or 2 day training. It's 2 months to 6 month kind of a training. So where does this data go? So I think that number, you know, we need to capture, you know, to be able to have a very accurate estimate as to how many people are getting trained in the country. What we have reasonable idea is about the Government of India funded training as well as the state funded training.
But the problem doesn't really lie in the organized sector. It lies more in the unorganized sector, and a huge percentage of labor in India falls under that.
That's right.
So how do you manage resources when it comes to training and skilling unorganized labor in India?
See, one thing I'll tell you that, we have almost 2,100 qualification packs, which are job roles, and which are actually made by the industry through the sector skill councils. And it is mandatory that each job role is to be vetted by 30 organizations. 10 of them are large scale organizations, industry players, 10 are MSME, and 10 are small sector kind of a thing. So small sector perhaps, meets the needs of informal sector to a large extent. But it has been a challenge that since significant, very, very significant percentage of our population actually works in unorganized and informal sector. How do you collect that? Because there is no one body which represents the interest of that sector. It's all very, very heterogeneous, all distributed, scattered all over the space. So that's a big challenge that we are looking at. But I would feel a shift in our country from informal to formal, from unorganized to organized, appears to be a writing on the wall. They're still early days, and it will never disappear. But the percentage would increase more in the favor of organized and formal sector. Things like GST. So some companies, where there were motivations they had to remain in the informal part of the economy may disappear after GST is applied to all people. Demonetization itself, will have a lot of positive effects in terms of movement from informal to formal. But again, it will not happen overnight. It's a long journey. And so far all efforts are being made to ensure that we also address the informal and formal sector. Some sector skill councils that we have, for example, agriculture.
Many skills sector councils.
No, I'm saying which largely address the informal and unorganized space.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have PWDs, people with disabilities. We have domestic workers. We have agriculture. All of them almost wholly address the unorganized space.
How does it make it beneficial to have industry stalwarts heading these sector skill councils? Does it help?
I think it helps hugely. One is, when you have the likes of Dr. Naresh Trihan, Mr. Sunil Munjal, Vandana Luthra, these kind of people, throw their weight around it. I think it makes a lot of difference. One is that SSCs become the rallying point for industry participation. Once they say that such iconic people are the chair, a lot of people are willing to join the governing councils and the board of directors of sector skill councils. And that's a process which starts, and eventually a lot of these corporates, they put in their best in terms of evolution of standards, in terms of many of them setting up iconic training facilities and so on and so forth. I think it has helped hugely that, and not just the chairman. In fact, if you look at the entire list of people in the governing councils and board of directors of our SSCs, many people are very iconic and who's who of the industry.
So let me come to comparing policies. And NSDC as such is an organization, but if you compare Manrega with Skill India, Manrega was directly employing people. Skill India is skilling people to make them employable. But that has not resulted in the job growth, and I'll come again to it. Where do you think, and if the Skill India movement has failed because the numbers in terms of job growth are not being seen, do you think we'll be able to see the numbers by 2019?
First is, I strongly disagree that Skill India movement has not been successful. I think if you look at, I'll just throw some data points. 10 years back, the country was skilling about 10-12 lakh people, excluding corporate sector, through central government and state governments put together, right? Today that number is there's a more than 10-fold increase which has happened there, right? On a like-to-like, apple and orange comparison. So it's happening, but let's understand, Skill India mission has a limited role to play in creation of new jobs. So what happens, the newer FDI that you get, the newer domestic investments that the country is able to garner, they need certain kind of skills. So those are directly addressed by the Skill India mission. But by itself, what kind of investments come and what kind of job creation happens, this is, there are multiple factors which play, and, they decide.
But isn't it a primary motive for skilling to actually culminate into jobs? So give you a number which we found out, about 550,000 workers was skilled by NSDC in 2016, and only 12% found jobs were employable. So isn't the number a
No,
bit...
I think what you're referring is to the PMKVY data.
Yeah,
the
the
Pradhan Mantri
Pradhan
Kaushal Vikas
Mantri,
Yojana.
yeah.
See, this data is not correct at all. I'll tell you why. The PMKVY 1 that we ran, the scheme did not intend to capture employment number at all. At that point of time, it was not an employment-centric scheme at all.
Then what is the number 12% about?
So whatever number training partners used to report voluntarily, that the system has captured. But there was no compulsion for them to share, kind of thing. There was no compulsion for the youths to share that they have been placed. There was no compulsion for the training partners to report how many people have been. So this is what, in normal course of thing, the system has been able to capture. I would say more accidentally than by way of planning. So I must tell you what is the learning that we had for the PMKY 2, which is currently operative and is going to be there till the year 2020. We have said that, last 20% payment that accrues to the training partners would happen only if 70% people in the batch are placed, So we have also learned, see, let me also understand skilling is a new space, kind of a thing. With every cycle, there are more learnings. What is very important that we as a system should have the agility to absorb those learnings and plow it back into schemes. And so today, if you look at this was perhaps the first full year when the PMKY 2 was operational. So I would say in July, August time frame, we'll have a fair, because you have to give some time window when the student passes out and the job happens, kind of a thing. So this sometime in the month of July this year, we'll have a full year data for PMKY placements also, which I have a very, very good level of confidence would be far higher than what the part data that could be captured under PMKY 1.
Okay, so let me take a cue from where you said that skilling and reskilling again and again is very important, and from an organized labor perspective, let me come to the organized labor. And most of them at the age of in between 30 and 40 are finding their skills redundant because of the advent of AI and newer technologies. So where does NSDC play a part here? Have you mapped that age group as well, and have you mapped the organized sector as well, and are you imparting skills there?
I think that's an excellent question. First of all, I think it's very important to understand that the newer investments, especially in the manufacturing space, which are happening now and more so under Industry 4.0, which will happen. Those investments are likely to be more capital intensive, more technology intensive, machine intensive. They may not be as labor intensive, kind of a thing. So that's a challenge. But so the need for skills would also change. Robotics is there all across. We know that in the manufacturing intelligence. Machine learning has become a reality today. Artificial intelligence, expert systems, Internet of Things. Look at any industry sector. Let's look at information technology. I mean, till a couple of years back, maybe if you know Java or C++ or .NET or Oracle, maybe that used to be good enough.
And
today,
now they are redundant. Yeah.
Everything is going digital unless you are taught in the engineering colleges or in skilling centers like those of NSDC partners. Things which are more mobility computing or big data analytics or social media. Or these kind of things. Cloud computing. Unless you are taught this, your employability suffers. So I think the biggest challenge for all of us is that, how, as we as a country, not just NSDC, not just the skills ministry, the challenge is that how do we ensure that all these things are factored in the mainstream education as well as the skill space. And look at the auto example, for example. There'll be, in days to come, there'll be transition from fossil fuel to biofuels, there'll be driverless cars, kind of a thing. There'll be electrical vehicles and all that. All these will require very, very different kind of skills,
And I was about to come to the point where you talked about education. Don't you think NSDC should partner with more and more universities and actually move in a way that really needs course correction, literally?
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, to a large extent, we need to mainstream skills, ensure that they are a part of the school curriculum also. And it's even more important for the vernacular boards, for the state boards, and we are doing something. It is the MHRD scheme for vocationalization of secondary education, where NSDC training partners actually help running the scheme at schools. Some states like Haryana have done some outstanding work in that area, where when you get into class 9, that time itself you get into one vocational subject, which becomes a part of the board curriculum itself. Our partners, NSDC's partners, help you set up the lab. They give you teachers on contracts, trainers for vocational skills, and that kind of a thing. And then at the end of the day, they get the SSC certification as well as the board certificate, both for 10th and 12th will reflect that 5th or 6th vocational subject that you have. But and we're trying to, so this for secondary level, this is funded by MHRD. But there are also programs at All India Council of Technical Education, where they also run a small component of Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, and also there are schemes for UGC funded institutions and so on and so forth. But many of those are self-funded kind of schemes. I think very clearly we need to mainstream. A lot of good work has happened in the space, but much more needs to be done.
Before I come to my final set of questions, do you think there are any flaws from your perspective in NSDC and its working, and you think there needs to be something which has to be smoothened out?
The NSDC today is, if you look at, about 2 years back, we had about 50-60 people. Today we have, 240 people, full-time people here. Then we have, at any point of time, close to 100 consultants who work for us. So we have improved not only staffing, there is a greater performance rigor in the organization. There is a robustness in our processes. A lot of strategic things which we were not doing earlier, those are being done today. So I think a lot of things have improved. If you ask me, are we perfect? Perhaps not. I mean, as Oscar Wilde said, perfection is a curse, as it leaves no scope for improvement. So areas where we could improve are, we need to work on improving the efficacy of our assessment systems. We need to ensure that apprenticeship, which is a very, very important scheme of the Government of India, and now with a new act and apprenticeship regime becoming more industry friendly, I think NSDC needs to put its weight behind it along with sector skill councils to make more and more corporates embrace this. That's one area where not much work has happened. It's going to happen. I think that's one area where we can improve. Also, in our training partners, some of them are doing some outstanding work, the creamy layer of the training partners. But at the bottom of the pyramid also, are those training partners doing as good a work? Perhaps not. So how do we ensure that there is a greater degree of uniformity in the way skills are delivered?
And taking a cue from that, to smoothen these flaws, do you expect anything from the government in this budget?
I think it would be wrong to answer, but if I may be allowed to resonate, what the skills industry wants. In the last budget, very, very important scheme called Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Yojana started, where every district or a parliamentary constituency had to have a aspirational and iconic training center. So I think about 350 of them have been set up out of 650 districts. So I think we have to need, there's a need, the country expects fast tracking in the next financial year, and all complete as much part of the PMKK journey, taking it practically to all districts. I think that's one imperative. The World Bank has agreed to fund the sector majorly. How do we develop schemes? How do we have opportunities to deploy those funds imaginatively and productively, so that there is a synergy in the way the outcomes happen there? That will be a challenge. The Indian Institute of Skills are being created through PPP mode, for which major corporates have been invited to attend. That's one thing. Apprenticeship, again, expectation is that we'll get more funding, so that the entire apprenticeship numbers can gallop ahead at a much faster pace. So I think these are the broad expectations that, and also perhaps somewhere while NSDC deploys technology big time, in terms of having a SDMS, which is a student life cycle kind of a thing, where the entire scheme details are captured progressively as the program happens. We also have a center accreditation and affiliation program, which is on an online portal. But for delivery of skills, how do we deploy, because this is a country of 650,000 villages, and almost 200,000 panchayats, how do we reach out to them? Kind of a thing. So I think technology has to be leveraged big time, much bigger than what it has been done in the coming year for a far deeper penetration.
And some departments of the government have already done well in that case. For example, let's say talk about BharatNet, which has really penetrated into the rural India. And before we wrap up this interview, NSDC on a whole the motive behind it is CSR. It's corporate social responsibility, and whatever you do already falls under it. But if you could enlighten us on the CSR initiatives that NSDC has and the corporates which are using the CSR funds to actually help NSDC.
As you know, under the new Companies Act, now corporates are required to spend 2% of their average net profit of last 3 years on CSR, and skilling has been allowed to be a part of that process. So what we have done, we have proactively reached out to many corporates, that why don't you skill? So some of them are skilling themselves, but many said that, yeah, we are prepared to, sign the check and give you this money through the National Skill Development Fund. But, we don't want to get into the actual delivery of skills. And so it was a very, very good combination that we have a network of a large number of training partners and large number of training centers. So we have a due diligence process, and the better ones are selected there to run their skilling programs, in the geographical areas which are of interest to them, and to address the demographics which are key to them and the job roles that are key to them. So we till last month we had almost 100 crore rupee worth of funds were leveraged through CSR route, largely from public sectors, something from private sector also. And just now, NALCO has signed a very, very ambitious order with us, which is about 50 crore worth of CSR funding for skilling program. So I think this is a very, very good route. It's a win-win for all because they are able to leverage their CSR funds for visible and tangible outcomes.
Yes, hope that people can actually benefit out of it as well. And now my final question to you, and not as a CEO of NSDC, but as an industry veteran, as an industry leader, how would you rate the Narendra Modi government in the past 3.5 years?
I think it will be very unfair, but a lot of positivity that you see in the skill space, that's for everybody to see. Ever since Skill India mission was launched, the funding has increased. There is a new ministry for skill development and entrepreneurship. More people are being funded, and there is a positivity. The corporate connect is more and more corporates are putting their skill.
But if we talk about
I would say it's
a scale from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Where would the number lie?
On what front? Skills?
As an industry leader, the 3.5 years.
See, I'm no longer in the industry, but
veteran.
This is not a NSDC, but my personal take would be, I think it's an outstanding performance, perhaps 9 out of 10. But that's my personal take, not that of the ministry or the NSDC.
And where would you take that 1 point away from?
No, basically, see, let's talk about skills itself as a space, right? We ignored skills for almost 60 years, right? So in a short window, a lot of reforms had to happen, lot of things had happened, and these things take time, whatever impetus that you give through budget and through other interventions, I think they take some time to mobilize, So okay. I would really feel the current government has done outstanding, but this is my personal opinion.
Well, we think our opinion is there was a very frank answers to some really inquisitive questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Krishna, for giving BW Businessworld your time. Thank you so much for watching.